mission towards society and my own community. So I was convinced that I was going to succeed, and we did succeed. We managed to train 500 young women. We opened several centers in different provinces, and so then I received different regional prizes, and the most important prize for me was the AGFUND prize, the International Prince Talal Prize, and this had a huge impact on my activities. The way that people looked at me changed, and before people used to have a different perception of me because I was illiterate, but then after winning this prize, everybody changed their perception of me, and this proves that determination does bear fruits. And I hope that this will be an example for other women so that we can increase the success stories of women. And in fact, my case has become a case study in schools. And everybody knows how Aisha Bali won this prize, even though she was illiterate. And as I said, this is thanks to God and thanks to perseverance and determination. And I'm grateful to God and to AGFUND for this prize. So when I obtained the prize, I was illiterate. I didn't know how to read or write. And I only had 3 months before the awarding of the prize to learn how to read and write so that I could read my speech myself at the United Nations. And I was very afraid, but I was encouraged by everybody, by Dr. Nasser, and I'm very grateful towards him. He told me not to be afraid and to move forward, to move ahead. I also, through the director of the school, he also helped me make progress. And as I said, I was illiterate. And with the determination and the help of God, we managed to achieve the results we were hoping for.
This is the problem of the society. We have to include women in education, include women in financial inclusion. And this is the role of this symposium, gathering here to show an example. So, Nawal, I'll give you the floor. So, and then we'll...
First of all, I would like to say how happy I am that this symposium is being held in the Human Rights Council room at the United Nations. In fact, I'm really proud and joyful, and this brings me to my opening point. So the initial idea which pushed me towards this long journey. The greatest source of happiness in life for human beings is freedom, and there are prisoners who are behind bars and they cannot make their voices heard from this situation. And I had a decisive moment in my life. I was a journalist, a young journalist, and I had a subject to work on, and it was a very interesting one. So it was regarding 4 Lebanese people who were who got the drug sentence for bringing drugs into the country, and it was just pure chance, and I felt that it was fate for me to defend this cause. But perhaps I moved towards covering this, and maybe I wasn't aware of this. So by chance, I saw children in the main hall of the prison, and they were children who were younger than 2 years old. And at that point, my life completely changed. It was transformed. I stopped and I asked the guards, what are these children doing here in this prison? And I was stupefied. I was completely astonished by their answers. They said, these children live in the prisons behind bars with their mothers. And at that moment, of course, I was extremely shocked. How could innocence be imprisoned in a place which is the very opposite of innocence itself? And that's how my journey began with these prisoners. This is how my journey began, with these innocent children who are living in an environment that is the very negation of innocence, an environment of sadness, of imprisonment, in the full sense of the word, in living in conditions which are absolutely not adequate for children. And this is how my long journey began. And this is how, many years later, this journey has transformed into my mission. I couldn't remain merely a journalist, but I became a journalist with a cause, and I wrote an article in Egyptian newspapers concerning innocent children in prison, and this cause completely became my life's mission. And this is how I became an ardent defender for the rights of these innocent children. And by taking on this cause, I focused on a number of aspects, and this is how I became a defender for prisoners and for combating poverty, and also for elderly persons in prison. The only crime of that these people had committed was that they were poor. These were illiterate women who were not aware of the law, who had found themselves indebted, and ultimately they ended up in prison because of this. And when this issue of prisoners who were imprisoned due to debts when I made a story about this, they were defended by other people. And so there were other organizations that defended their cause. So it's not just about ensuring the freedom of these people who are in prison as a result of debt, but it's not just about helping them to pay their debt. I discovered that 60% of these people liberated from prison ended up once again in the same situation and being indebted again. And so I asked myself, why is that the case? And I understood then that there was social stigmatization that was taking place, and that really added to all of the problems that these women were already suffering from. So it's not just an issue of poverty, but also stigmatization. A poor person is not just financially poor, but they're also disadvantaged in terms of their capacities to lead their own life and to lead a decent life. So they try to find a way to make progress, but then they don't necessarily make the right decisions, which means that they end up in a worse situation. So of course we had to find a solution to break this vicious cycle, and so we need to provide women with their own empowerment through training and education. And this is how I launched a new project, and I had the honor to win the AGFUND prize that year. And this was really a recognition of our project, and so we are extremely grateful to the founders of this prize, Prince Talal, and they really had a vision to take on the causes of the problem and not just the problem itself. So this is an approach that I use myself to help prisoners and their children. So I'm really trying to get to the root cause of the problem and to address that. Of course, people say that it's a marathon, not a sprint, but I still think that we have a lot of work to carry out. So I'm very grateful to AGFUND, and I wish you every success in continuing to support initiatives which are honorable and which are looking at humanity.
This is the second success story and how we learn from that. So this is when we call financial inclusion and financial education. Today, with using the wallet, if you use your wallet and pay, they could give you 15% return on your wallet. This is to encourage you to continue so. We'll give the floor to Dr. Mary regarding her success story, and we, looking forward to hear what you've been benefiting from the prize and what you're doing now, and how can we benefit more in the future.
Thank you very much. I'm here today representing Helen Keller International, which is an international agency, a health-based agency. It's not a financial agency. We started off over 100 years ago, originally to support persons who had lost their sight. Gradually, this has evolved to the prevention of blindness, the prevention of malnutrition, and the prevention and control of tropical diseases that lead to blindness. And onchocerciasis was the leading cause of adult blindness in Sierra Leone and many other sub-Saharan African countries, and that was the reason we won the prize in 2008. Progress to date has been very substantial. 10 years ago, we were talking about controlling onchocerciasis. We're now talking about the elimination of this disease completely in all the countries that Helen Keller International works in. We expect to achieve that goal around 2025, and tremendous impact for communities that were devastated by blindness in the old days. The platform that we worked on for onchocerciasis and other health interventions like vitamin A deficiency has enabled us to build a very close working relationship with government, probably the most satisfactory relationship that any NGO has with national governments. It's built on trust, it's built on respect, and it's built on an understanding of everybody's obligations to the public, obligations to donors. I don't know if my slide is up there, but the few interventions that I think have been most successful, not just in Sierra Leone, but around the world, have been the enhanced homestead food production that encourages mothers to diversify the crops that they grow in their backyard gardens, not just for income generation, but also to diversify the diets that they're feeding their families. Village saving and loan associations target the poorest, the most remote communities where women have absolutely no options, no other options for financial services at all. Nutrition-sensitive agriculture targets not just diversifying diets, but increasing the control that women have over the income that has been generated. In a context like Sierra Leone, women are providing 60% or more of the workforce, but are owning 30% or less of the assets. Having greater control over those assets improves the welfare of their family. Integrated reproductive and child health, for me this is an absolute no-brainer, and yet it has been slow to get off the ground. If a woman has to travel 5 or 10 or 15 more miles to get to a health facility, and we're trying to encourage her to go there for her child's vaccinations, she's taking time out from her agricultural obligations, from her household obligations, from her childcare obligations at home, to travel that distance, which may be the best part of a day to go there and come back. If we're only providing one service when she gets there, we've wasted an opportunity and we've wasted her time. Integrating reproductive health with child health is an absolute win-win for everybody. It's a win for the mother, it's a win for the health sector, it's a win for the family. Value addition is the area that we're working on now, where we are trying to increase production and diversify agricultural productivity. But 30% or more of what is produced in Sierra Leone is spoilt after the harvest because transportation to markets is so limited. Encouraging farmers to get involved in processing so that they can add value to their crops and add storage time, shelf life to their produce would increase their incomes. If we go to the next slide, HKI is very much an evidence-based organization. We pride ourselves on not implementing things that do not have evidence that they will succeed in the context in which we work. We do not pilot test unless we have good evidence that a pilot test itself will be successful. And we prioritize the most vulnerable. Onchocerciasis is a great example. You cannot go from onchocerciasis control to elimination unless you have managed to reach the most vulnerable in your communities. And it is that platform that enables us to do other work in these most vulnerable of communities. And we pride ourselves again on working through existing structures. We do not build parallel systems anywhere. We work through government and we work through existing civil society. My last slide is talking about the current things that we are doing, which we are particularly proud about in the Sierra Leonean context, introducing climate-smart, pest-resistant crops, such as orange flesh sweet potatoes, that grow easily in our climatic conditions and can be processed and added to a value chain, such as flour and cake production for processors. And this is something which our next grant from AGFUND will be focusing on, the processing part of production and increasing shelf life and marketability of produce. Thank you.
Dr. Farana, we'd like to hear from you and your experience with the private sector and how you will be telling us your success story. How can we learn from it? How can we replicate it and somewhere else? Please, the floor is yours.
First of all, let me thank you on behalf of the AGFUND for the invitation, as well to UNITAR, for my colleagues here that have a special relation since my association with the UN previously. I'm glad to be back in this historical room and to, most of all, to share the podium with three amazing women that are already success stories. So I try to add some, from my own experience of meeting and working with amazing women entrepreneurs in particular around the world. We focus a lot on the problems this morning of what are the barriers for women to access to finance. Some of them have been highlighted as being both from demand and supply. So I'll try to see, just acknowledge first that there is a gender finance gap, even when the warriors have already set up their businesses, whether informal or formal, there is a gender gap in financing. I work now in the private sector, in GDSI, a consulting company, and we pride ourselves to find development solutions in partnership with government, municipalities, and other actors in the civil society, for example. So we still have this picture where you see it's quite scary figure, the 1.7 trillion gender gap financing for small and medium firms. Why is that? We have seen the barriers this morning, but let me just refocus on the women's side. Most women do not start a business to make money. Their inner motivation, it's either subsistence, and that's why they are often informal, but also they solve a problem either within the family or the community. So they want to make an impact. So when they go to the bank, they don't say the bottom line. They don't say, I want to make money, I want to grow my firms. They focus on the achievements they want to see, the change they want to see in the society or in their personal life. Whether they are in a biotech, I met a very innovative firm. She was a mother, first of all. She was caring for a child with diabetes and innovating with a new, easy-to-use way of monitoring the child diabetes. Although she was growing a biotech company, her first concern was a child. So most women, when they go to the bank, they tell stories. They are about impact in the society, about impact for their families. They are not able to speak the financial terms that the banks want to hear. So this financial education and this attitude, this self-confidence that women have to learn, that it's good to make money too. It's good to have your inner motivation because it's your driver to achieve. But it's also, in economic growth and the fact that you are able to create jobs should be a goal as well. And women have problems in explaining this to the bankers. At the same time, on the other side, we need to educate the financial institution to understand the women business in a better light and have the indicators set up in a way that this different type of growth, a different type of impact would be captured by their financial indicators. For example, in many countries, there is now, in the regulatory environment, the ability to create a social enterprise. And sometimes it's much more convenient for women to identify with, that setting up a business. So the social enterprise respond more to their needs, to the inner motivation to create a business. But let's also look at other type of solution there. Now you can see on the slides. Beside the financial institution, there is now an array of financial providers that come with the fintech. What is financial technology? This term was first just used for the back office type of improvements and innovation, but nowadays it has affected all type of our lives, simply because it's now accessible on the mobile technology that has made a lot more easy to create solutions. They are there creating a space because the technology is there to open these new doors. So as you can see from the slide, there is peer-to-peer lending, there is supply finance that is related to trade when companies are able to start exporting. And there is the e-commerce new type of lending facilities. For example, a company that many of you may know, Alibaba, has actually Ali Finance. And they have a program that is called Taobao, where they provide skills development to the small companies they want to sell online, together with the finance. This finance are given where the company starts selling online. So that means that little by little, the companies are able to grow as their sales grow, and their credit history is recorded by their online sales. So this is a new way of experiencing the financial access. The same for supply trade financing, where we're talking about blockchain technology. This solution provides total transparency, is able to track basically from the farm to the table. It's very adapted to the supply chain in agriculture. This type of technology serves the needs of rural areas. So those technology advances have been actually challenging the banking system and even the microfinance system, and lower the cost of credit for the small enterprises. So those are, to me, very positive happenings in the world that make accessible to the women more easily finance that they need as they start growing the business. As long as they can start planning more on the long terms and see the potential of growing their business, the solution will be there. There is another important aspect the international organizations have pointed out, and particularly the SME Finance Group run by the IFC, also together with the UN, and that is engaged in this finance forum. There are several working groups that work on it, is the blended finance solutions, which actually AGFUND is a typical example, because as you mentioned in your opening speech, you never started a project without a partner. So blended finance is important, but as the private sector comes in collaboration with aid, we still have to look at the picture of aid and how the aid will still contribute, and it's important to work for the cause of women. And unfortunately, although there is apparently an increase of women supported projects, it is in relation to secondary project. For example, a water improvement, infrastructure improvement will also affect positively women, so we tick the box. But the women-centric services and aid project have remained linearly at 4% for the Development Aid Committee figures that gathers more donors. So this is not good enough. We are not doing enough. And even if we have opportunities to engage the private sector with this blended finance, the aid is not contributing enough to the extent that it should, particularly because we sort of think that all the SDGs somehow affect the women, but if the project doesn't have as a core goal how to transform women's life, it will not achieve. It's not only by sort of a secondary engagement that we can really make the transformation. And when we are transformation, as demonstrated by success stories of the AGFUND, the society will benefit and sustainable development will happen. Thank you.
What you're saying took me back to 1995. When we started talking about financial inclusion, most of the people say microfinance should stay outside the financial system. It took them almost 20 years to say microfinance or financial inclusion get to be must. Our problem, how the way we look at it, we thought financial inclusion, and this is just a starter loan. There is a saving, there is access to use technology, and you highlight mentioning Alibaba. Imagine today, the second issue, when you mention 70 million people is waiting for the service, they are refugees. They need, service, they need financial inclusion. And by the way, Alibaba heading toward that. Doing this is with Barack. They bought almost 25% of network and transfer money through Barack, which is Barack doing microfinance. And this is the things we need to share it together. How can we improve, the situation of women? I'm not going to ask questions. I will leave the floor, ask a question. We still have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I will ask the floor if there's anybody have a question to any one of the panelists. Question? Woman first. There is a woman we want to ask because there is 3 men asking to speak. If there is a woman, we'll give a woman the...
Specific needs of women is extremely important to transform their lives. What do you think are the 2-3 important parameters that have to be included?
Thank you for your question. I was referring, not specific to microfinance, I was referring to all the 8 projects. If you look at the chart from the Development Aid Committee, now there is an array of projects that are, positive impact to the women. They're ticked under the gender. So, inflate the figures of what is gender-friendly project. But in fact, the gender core projects are lingering at 4%. So, I'm saying, okay, it looks not we have reached 38% in the aid for gender, but in fact, we're still at a low of 4, because the other projects don't have as a core initiative to transform the women or to encourage women economic empowerment. Well, I think actually Mary gave us a very good lead on what, when you focus on the gender issue, should do whenever you start any project, is do a pilot, I believe that result based from the pilot will guide you in success. And then another important element is the participation of women in both sides. They cannot just be beneficiary, they have to be engaged in the project design and delivery. And then, as one of my colleagues from UN Women mentioned before, it cannot be exclusive of the gender balance, and men should be equally positively impacted. For example, when we're delivering training, we usually never have, or rarely, women-only training. We just encourage at least 30% male participation because of this inclusiveness that needs to be maintained. This is one way of doing it, but there are other ways. Sometimes you cannot escape or having gender separation for cultural reason or other, but keeping in mind the gender balance is another important element that I would keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I will allow me to just give 1 minute each speaker, and then we'll close the session in time probably. So we'll give 1 minute for every one of you if you want to say something to just wrap up and close the session.
I would like to speak of women in Saudi Arabia. Under the current leadership, women have full rights. She has become the sister of men. I never thought women would have all the rights. I never expected it, but thanks to God, it has become a reality. I am one of the beneficiaries. My presence now here in the Prince Talal International Prize is an achievement. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, women do not need anything, and that is thanks to our leadership.
في دقيقة عايزة أقول إنه كل إنسان مهما كان.
I would like to say that every human being, regardless of what mistakes they might have made, has the right to benefit from a second chance in life. And there is a slogan, one that pushed me to fiercely defend women. Women who I cannot describe as being vulnerable. They are more than vulnerable. They are forgotten about behind these bars. They do not have a voice behind these bars. And these women have the right to have a second chance. They should benefit from training, from the opportunity to work, and we need to be tolerant with these women in order to open new doors for them so that they can become good citizens. And we are in the process of talking about female empowerment for poor women. And an important part of my life has been dedicated to a cause which demands more tolerance from us, to give a second chance to these women so that they can become citizens that play a key role in our society. We need to respect their humanity regardless of the errors they may have committed. I would like to thank AGFUND for this opportunity to speak today so that I can explain the cause that I have been defending for decades, for justice and humanity.
Thank you. As an organization, HKI believes that we have to engage women and empower women, because without women we cannot achieve our public health goals. Most of our workforce in a country like Sierra Leone are females. Our own chief executive officer based in New York is female. Most of our senior management team within the organization are female. Most of our country directors around the world are female. And most of, as I said, our workforce in the public health sector is female. Building interventions, empowering and scaling up interventions that women need is the biggest priority. And women need education. Women need reproductive health services. Women need microfinance if it's going to benefit their family. I liked your definition that women don't go because they want to get themselves rich. They go because they want to benefit their family's welfare. And understanding that that is an absolute basic requirement. Women come forward for health services not because they want something for themselves, but they want something for their children. They want to see their children having a better life. And understanding that that is the main motivation behind women, I think helps us understand why we have challenges, but also why we have opportunities.
I will be very brief in consideration of the time. I would like to thank you again, both the UNITAR and AGFUND, for the invitation. And I'm very excited about the launch of this global platform on financial inclusion learning. And I'd like to see whether we can collaborate in delivery to make it accessible around the world, and probably providing some of the solutions that we have experienced worked within our work and with our partners. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your participation. This cannot be happened without your, attendance and your coming every year to support AGFUND in this symposium. Thank you very much.